Hello and welcome to Dean Park. Right, strap yourself in. This is going to be an in-depth review of the mighty Deltic. Before I kick off the review, I've got to point out that I am in no way affiliated to Accurascale, and I've actually paid for the models showcased today with my own money. Therefore, I can give an open, honest and unbiased view of this particular locomotive. I hope you enjoy the review, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on these models, so please post your feedback in the comment section below. I'd also politely ask you to rate this video either with a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and consider subscribing to my channel to watch more content from Dean Park. And finally, thanks to the Southerner for providing me with stunning real-life footage of the Class 55 Deltic. The British Rail Class 55, also known as the Deltic, were built between 1961 and 1962 by English Electric. They were designed for high-speed express passenger services on the East Coast Main Line between Edinburgh and London King's Cross. They gained the name Deltic from the prototype locomotive, which in turn was named after the Napier Deltic power units, of which there were 2 in each locomotive. At the time of the introduction into service, the Class 55s were the most powerful single-unit diesel locomotives in the world, with a power output of 3,300 horsepower. They had an official maximum speed of 100 miles per hour, however this was frequently exceeded, especially in their later years of service. When introduced, the Class 55 trimmed an hour off the journey time from London to Edinburgh, with subsequent upgrades to the rail infrastructure, trimming this down again to 5.5 hours for some expresses. Originally outshopped in two-tone green, which helped disguise the sheer size and slab sides of the locomotives, they were numbered D9000 to D9121. This later giving way to 55001 to 55022 under the top system of the 1970s. Throughout the second half of the 1960s, BR Corporate Blue was introduced on these giants, with a large yellow nose incorporated to make them more visible for lineside safety reasons. Finsbury Park also adorned their locos with white cab surrounds. On the subject of depots, the Deltics were maintained at 3 depots along the East Coast Main Line: Finsbury Park in London, Gateshead in Newcastle and Haymarket in Edinburgh. All locos were named, with those at Haymarket and Gateshead taking the names of regiments of the British Army, while Finsbury Park locos took the names of famous racehorses. From 1978, these grand locos were relegated to secondary duties as the introduction of the HST took over their Premier Express services. The National Rail Museum selected 55002, King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry, for preservation, repainting her in her original two-tone green, albeit with full yellow ends, for her last 18 months in service. The last services ran between Aberdeen and York on 31st December 1981, with the Deltic Scotsman Farewell making the curtain call on Deltic operations, with 55022 Royal Scots Grey drawing into London King's Cross on the 2nd of December 1982. 6 out of the 22 Deltics survived into preservation, with 2 of them being represented in model form here at Dean Park. Accurascale took a bold step back in November 2018 when they announced they were going to produce an all-new 00 gauge Deltic. They then cranked up the excitement to fever pitch when they said they were going to produce the full set of 22 locos in their first run. I remember going to Worley and seeing the early 3D printed sample of the model and chatting to Fran and Patrick on the Accurascale stand about this exciting new project. I've always admired the Deltic. In fact, as a 5-year-old, I was hoisted by my dad onto the buffer of 55002 at the National Railway Museum in York, This huge beast really did spark my interest, and I'm glad to be able to have this very loco in model form to review today. This is a 3D printed sample of the Accurascale Deltic that many of you will have stared at in the Accurascale cabinets at exhibitions. It's been kindly loaned to me by Fran for use in this video. Looking at the 3D print, while rough in some areas, you can really see the level of detail designed into this model right from the start. Okay, I've got 3 examples of the Deltic. Let's just say my MasterCard's taking a bit of a battering this month, as all 3 of these are the full fat sound fitted variants. We have the iconic looks of Royal Scots Grey, which is adorned with all the trimmings along with silver tanks and a grey roof. This is one of the locos involved in the Farewell Tour and was the last Deltic to draw into King's Cross on the 2nd of January 1982. It's actually hard to believe that this was now over 40 years ago. Royal Scots Grey is joined by another loco involved in the Farewell Tour, which is of course 55002 King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry, or Coley for short. It's finished in the original two-tone green livery, but with full yellow ends, as it ran like this during 1981 until preservation. And thirdly, I have 55005 Prince of Wales' Own Regiment of Yorkshire, in run-of-the-mill everyday BR blue, without all the embellishments of the other 2 locos. This loco actually lasted to 1981 in service before being withdrawn and subsequently cut up at Doncaster in 1983, and hence it's the only loco here that did not make it into preservation. I always start by asking, does it look right? In the case of the Deltic, this is a resounding yes. In fact, it's a massive yes. It addresses so many of the compromises made by the ageing Bachmann Deltic and pushes the game on significantly. The shape of the nose, an area often debated on the Bachmann model, has been nailed by Accurascale. It looks spot on. The way the nose curves from the top round to the vertical slab sides of the loco are captured on this model. Looking at the glazing, this is perfectly fitted both at the front and the sides of the loco. The window rim is a separately fitted part and even has small screw detail. Looking at the blue version, this looks fantastic. However, on the white cab version, the lack of paint in the actual screw holes does give them a perhaps more pronounced look than the appearance on the actual locos. But this is a minor point and it still looks fantastic on this particular model. The wiper blades are exquisite, being made from etched nickel silver, and while they don't touch the glazing, they're pretty much spot on. I suppose the fact they're not touching the glazing will make weathering of the actual windscreen a lot easier. I have to point out that on my example, a couple of the wipers were loose but didn't fall out. I suppose that allowed me to actually alter the angle as I pleased. There's no sign of glue or an untidy finish here. It's all very neatly done. Moving to the nose, the model captures the bulky nature of the Deltic. It's bristling with separately fitted parts, specific to each particular loco. On my examples, I've got electric train heating at the front there, but what is really cool is that they've put the warning symbol on the jumper. This is just fantastic. It's small details like this that just make you smile. On one of my examples, there are some untidy gluing of the lamp irons with some clear glue marks. Not noticeable unless you really take a close look, but an area that might irritate some. The headcode boxes are really nicely done on these models, from the glazed domino of RSG to the plated versions with marker lights. I actually prefer the plated one, but I also had to have a domino box as it looks so good on a Deltic. One area of the model that's drawn comment is the visible seam line that runs across the nose above the headcode. The injection moulding process produces a seam or a split line where different parts of the tooling have been assembled prior to moulding the bodies. This allows manufacturers to have interchangeable parts so that more variants of a particular model can be made. If you look on any model, you will see evidence of these lines. With the Deltic, it is visible under light, but this is the only way to allow different nose configurations to be accurately made at a cost-effective method. If you wanted a model with no seam lines, then each variant would have to have its own full one-piece tooling, and that would cost a fortune for them to produce, and obviously the cost would then have to be pushed on to the actual modeler. So this is why companies will use interchangeable parts on their actual tooling. Anyway, back to the model. The front end is excellent overall, and that's before I even mention the gently sprung buffers with correct buffer lengths. There's a full set of correct pipes and couplings you can fit, and also the NEM socket is easy to remove and reattach. It's all very cleverly designed. Modelers also get a full sheet of optional head codes to replace the factory fitted ones, along with a sheet explaining what each mean. This was an interesting read in itself, and you also get an informative booklet on the actual loco, as well as a full list of functions for operating the sound on this model. The sides of the model really capture the slab-sided nature of the Deltic. The two-tone green does a better job of hiding this than the BR blue. The windows are beautifully lined with silver rim, and looking through the windows you can even see the words Napier and Deltic cast onto the engine. The amount of attention to detail here is breathtaking, and it doesn't stop there, as a number of separately fitted and painted parts along the top of the tanks is crazy, and the detail moulded in the underframe itself never fails to impress when looking at it. The painted detail here is perfectly applied, even down to the tiny door handles and silver rims being picked out on the kick plates. The roof is a work of art. I mean, just look at it. So much finely etched detail added here. The grills are finely moulded and they really do pop in the light grey of Royal Scots Grey. Looking through the fine etching, you can even see the roof fans. The detail doesn't stop there, with a fully detailed cab with lit dials, and it's at this point you start to wonder if the price of $250 for the sound fitted model was wrong. Did Accurascale mean to make it $350? Was it a pricing error? As this model has details that you'd expect to find on an O-gauge model at double the price. It really is outstanding value for money. The bogies are also incredibly well detailed. On two of my examples, the springs and axle boxes are picked out in decorative colours, complete with finely white rimmed wheels. I never really understood why depots add these painted decorations to their celebrity locos. I think it looks much better in all over black, but that's just my personal taste. My favourite touch is the steps, with the fine etched detail on them. This really is brilliant attention to detail. The bogies themselves have a bit of flex to them, and I'd like to have seen them a little bit more rigid in this area. I wouldn't advise picking the loco up using the bogies. I'd obviously avoid touching them if possible. I've also got to mention the bogie chains. These have proved an issue for some modelers, with these arriving broken or detached. I feel we've probably reached the edge of what's practically possible by incorporating these fine chains in a double O gauge model. It's worth noting that the model has provision for EM and P4 wheel sets to be fitted. Honestly, this is one of the models that you just never tire of staring at. The model you get for your money is incredible. I could wax lyrical about this for days. Just before I put the Deltic through its paces, let's take a quick comparison look at this model against the Bachmann one. While a good model, the Bachmann's Deltic age really has caught up with it, and it's been exposed by this new Accurascale Class 55. I like the Bachmann Deltic, but the game has moved on. Right, let's put these Deltics to the test and see how they perform. I'll do my usual. I'll run them over all the track work, point work and crossings, sometimes at toy-like speeds. I'll then report back and rate the model. As you saw, the model performed exceptionally well. Not only was it smooth and responsive, but it's also got incredible slow speed running. It allows a scale speed to be achieved. One thing I'd like to tweak is the acceleration and deceleration, which I felt was a bit too brisk and unrealistic. Apart from that, operating this model puts a massive grin on my face. These sound fitted models are amazing. The twin speaker setup allows a full range of sounds to be recreated from the recorded Deltic sound file, and the list of functions goes to F30, which is far too many to be realistically used, but it's nice to know that they're there. The raspy nature of the engine and horns are exquisitely captured. It also has stay alive, so when the power is interrupted to the loco, it keeps moving and the sound stays on. So you have no fear that you'll have cutouts on a dirty section of track or a dead spot of, say for example, an InsuFrog on a turnout. I must also point out that there's a printing error in the manual. If you want to actually have drive lock at F5, you have to alter the CVs. The following CV alterations are on the screen now. Okay, it's now time to rate the Acuroscale Deltic. As you can see, it scores highly across the board. I'm going to take off one arrow for fit and finish, as some of the models, including one of my own, have the odd glue mark around the separately fitted parts. Plus, there were also a couple of floating bits around the box when I opened the model. Acuroscale's packaging is bulletproof, with the logo being securely held in thick foam. It comes in a huge box too, and is over double the size of the equivalent Bachmann or Hornby model. Looking at where they came, from the early 3D prints like this one, to the finished model, I think Acuroscale should be incredibly proud of the model that they've produced. Overall, it's a 5 arrow rating, and my recommendation is that you go ahead and buy this model. In saying that, unfortunately they're now all sold out, but rest assured a second batch of models will be on the way. And personally, I would not hesitate to order another one of these in the future. They are fantastic.